All right, everyone, welcome to today's Reduce and Reuse meeting. My name is Leah Kelleher, and I'm going to be starting off our presentation today. Here's our lovely MassDEP Reduce and Reuse team. Kathy Mirza, who's our branch chief of the Municipal Waste Reduction Branch. She's feeling under the weather today, so it'll just be Janice and I piloting this meeting. But Kathy, if you're on this meeting, hope you're feeling okay and feeling better. Here's our agenda. Next, I'm going to introduce the midpoint review of the state's Reduce and Reuse Action Plan by giving an overview of the review process. I'll give some background about the plan, what it is, how it came to be, and then a quick reminder of what's within MassDEP's purview as it relates to the plan. If you joined our last meeting on April 17th, some of the background info I'm about to give you is going to be a repeat from that webinar. So if you were in that last session, you may want to take a minute to grab some coffee or a snack or something. Maybe don't log off, but maybe tune out for a moment or two because you will have heard it already. After giving that background, I'll share a little bit about how we're measuring progress in the reuse and repair space, and then we'll discuss bulky items specifically, which is what we're here for today. And we are here today because it's been 3.5 years since MassDEP's Reduce and Reuse Action Plan was released, and it's time to do a midpoint review of what we've accomplished so far and where we're headed next. This is the second of 3 meetings, each focusing on priority material streams that are laid out in the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan. And our goal for each of these meetings is to really first give you a status update on the progress we've made so far on the action plan. So what's been accomplished, what's ongoing, what we haven't started yet. And then really we want to get your feedback so we can make sure we're not missing anything. We acknowledge that there's been some time that's passed since the plan was released. So we want to hear from you about, do our strategies need to be updated or tweaked? But before we jump into all of that, I'm going to rewind a little bit and give that high-level review of the action plan, tell the story of how it came to be. So again, it's time to grab that coffee if you were on the last meeting. The Reduce and Reuse Action Plan lives on our MassDEP website. If you want to go to that website and look at the actual document and follow along, you can go to MassDEP's Reduce and Reuse Working Group webpage and open the PDF of the plan. You can always go there to look for it. Janice or Becky, if you could drop a link to that in the chat, that'd be perfect. And then, of course, you can always Google it as well. If you're new to this group, you might be wondering, where does this plan come from? Why was it created? Well, some of you probably know that we have a statewide solid waste master plan, which sets 2 big goals. The first is to reduce waste disposal statewide by 30% over the next decade. And then there's the longer term goal of achieving 90% waste reduction by 2050. And you can see those goals in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide in that little graphic. There's a lot that's covered by the Solid Waste Master Plan, certainly not all about reuse, but there are parts of it that specifically focus on reuse and acknowledge that reaching our high-level waste goals, we need to be thinking about all the upstream R's that we talk about, reducing waste at the source, reuse, repair, doing all those things to prevent waste in the first place. And with that in mind, the Solid Waste Master Plan called for a Reduce and Reuse Action Plan. Charged with this mission, MassDEP formed a working group that began meeting in 2020. And then over a series of meetings, MassDEP, we collected feedback from that group on barriers to reuse and repair in Mass, along with opportunities to overcome those barriers and really grow our reuse ecosystem here in our state. And as you can imagine, there were a lot of ideas that emerged over the course of those meetings, and MassDEP collected them and essentially translated them into actions that were categorized into buckets, what we're calling, what in the plan are called strategy tools, and simply for this meeting, we'll just be calling them strategies. But they reflect the different ways that MassDEP can support source reduction and reuse initiatives. All this work, all those meetings, conversations, that culminated in the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan, which was published in December 2021. Earlier, I mentioned priority materials. Here they are. These were first identified in the Solid Waste Master Plan, and they're considered priority for reuse because they have significant diversion potential on a tonnage basis. They can reduce waste by phasing out materials that are hard to recycle. They have strong potential for increased reuse and donation. And there are local markets for them that exist in Mass, but they're either underutilized or they have a lot of development potential. So the way we're approaching the implementation of the action plan is by taking one or two of these material streams at a time, focusing on one or two. And then, so with that in mind, you'll see that some of these streams we've made more progress, while others we haven't really gotten to yet. Today, we're going to be focusing on bulky items, which you can see on the two bottom priority materials on this slide. They include household durable goods, as well as business institutional furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Here are the barriers to reuse and repair that stakeholders identified during those earlier R&R working group meetings. We think it's important to acknowledge these barriers because they're really what the action plan is working to address. So they are, in no particular order, cultural. So consumers might lack the knowledge, attitudes, or behaviors that would support a greater cultural adoption of waste prevention, reuse, repair, all those upstream R's. Access. There is insufficient access to convenient reuse and repair options in state. Infrastructure. Reuse and repair organizations might need greater support to maintain and grow their capacity to take materials. Policy. Local, state, and federal policies might inhibit reuse and repair in some instances. And then markets. Market trends and product design, they don't always align with waste prevention and reuse goals. When brainstorming and organizing actions to overcome all those barriers, there were several strategies that emerged. And these are the methods by which we could help grow, improve, and really normalize reuse in Mass. And they help us organize individual actions into buckets or categories. So these are the key strategies in the plan. They include education and behavior change, thinking about public outreach and conveying the why of reuse. Why does it matter? Why is it so important? Tools, resources, and technical assistance. So addressing operations and implementation. How do we build a reuse system? Grants and financial incentives. How do we fund reuse, make it work financially? Job training and workforce development, so the staffing and expertise in the reuse sector. And a quick note here, MassDEP, we don't create trainings and workforce development ourselves, but we do support it through grant funding and try to make our grants a catalyst for that work. And then we've got networking, connecting people working in the reuse and repair space in Mass. Legislation, which we're including their policies, regulations, ordinances, all the different ways legislation shows up to enable reuse. And then procurement, how do we model it through state contracts? You'll see these strategies come up again when we'll get into the discussion of bulky items, but here they all are laid out so you can see them and understand what we're talking about as we work our way through. And then just a quick reminder of what's within MassDEP's purview. We provide grants and financial incentives, we provide technical assistance, education and outreach, and then we help build networks, which is what we're doing today. Our work is designed to support all of you who are our partners in all of this work, and we know that growing our reuse ecosystem in Mass requires the involvement of many different sectors and entities. It's really a all hands on deck task. The action plan also maps out ways to measure progress. And I want to start with just a quick acknowledgement that measuring waste prevention and reuse is a challenge because they represent the absence of waste generated, and they can happen in many different ways by many different players. And while reuse isn't usually measured in terms of tonnage, at least not at the moment, we know that from a greenhouse gas perspective, the upstream impacts of creating and transporting new products contributes a lot to climate impacts. So reusing consumer goods can really be a game changer, especially as we scale up systems and programs in Mass that prevent waste. From a downstream perspective, we're continuing to track the adoption and impact of reuse activities in Mass over time. And you can see some examples of those things on the slides, the types of metrics we're looking at, which includes things like the number of grants requested and awarded, and then results from those grant projects, the number of technical assistance requests we're getting, access to reuse hubs like libraries of things and repair events. And then we compare that data, the more like qualitative and sometimes quantitative data, with waste characterization data on the tonnage of waste sent for disposal in Mass. And pairing those two things together, we can try to quantify the amount of waste avoided through source reduction and reuse. It's certainly not a perfect calculation, but it can help us paint a picture. And then I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to celebrate some of the progress we've made over the past couple of years. On a whole, we're seeing more variety of reuse businesses that manage reusable items and materials, from the Great Exchange, which focuses on office furniture, fixtures, and supplies, to Boston Building Resources, the reuse of building materials in that case. And then Hand Up is another example, focusing on mattress reuse sometimes. So we've seen a substantial increase as well in grant applications focused on reuse and repair. And you can see a snapshot here of some of those numbers and grants. This is from the last round of each grant, so the timing might be different for each, but these are the latest numbers that we've got. For those who don't know, SMRP stands for Sustainable Materials Recovery Program, which focuses on cities and towns. And then within that, RDP stands for Recycling Dividends Program. We've also seen an increase in the number of municipalities working to capture items for reuse, whether that's swap sheds, zero waste days, repair events, the expansion of centers for hard to recycle materials. We've seen more technical assistance provided by Recycling Works in Mass. They help businesses looking to focus on reuse and improve reuse in many different areas of their business practices. And then there have been the ongoing efforts from our 8 municipal assistance coordinators, who we call the MACs, to support municipalities on their quest to enable reuse at the local level and make it accessible to residents. Okay, that was a lot of info. I feel like I've already done a lot of talking and maybe a little rambling, but hopefully that was helpful background to set up this discussion. I'm gonna hand it over to Janice, but first just wanna open it up if there's any questions so far about the process that we're taking.
Thanks, Leah, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Now it's time to, get back to the listening mode if you were taking a little bit of a break. So, as Leah said, we're continuing to review our progress implementing the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan. Today, our discussion is going to dive deeply into what we've been doing with bulky items, or the status, I guess, of what bulky items in regards to the action plan. You can see on this slide that when we are talking about bulky items, we're referring to both household durable goods as well as business and institutional furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Given the overlap between bulky items coming from residential and commercial sectors, we've grouped these together so far, and we'll be talking about them together in the next couple of slides as we touch on the actions specified in the action plan. But since we're in an early stage of how to capture more bulky items for reuse, we'd like it if you could think about whether it makes sense to group these things together or not. We will have a poll later on after I go through all the actions and you guys have a minute to think about it. But we'd like to discuss the option of grouping them or not when we're done with this portion of the slides. So a bit of context about why we're focusing on bulky items and targeting them for reuse. The number one for us is, of course, to reduce trash disposal and associated costs. You may know that currently more than 40% of waste generated in Massachusetts is exported out of state for disposal due to a very constricted disposal market. That's about 1.4 million tons that is not municipal solid waste. It is primarily construction and demolition debris, C&D. In 2022, we conducted a statewide bulky waste characterization study that I'm hoping Leah or Becky can put in the chat for you to reference later. The study looked closely at large bulky items that are disposed as trash, including waistband items, as well as recoverable items for reuse and recycling. The study found that as much as 30% of what we are discarding is recoverable. We also know that bulky items are often in good condition and can be reused. Entities such as furniture banks and other social service organizations may be seeking items to assist clients. So there are these items and there is a place for them to go. And also nonprofits, schools, and new startup businesses can benefit from access to lower cost furnishings that meet their needs. In addition, items may be modified or repaired to extend life. In fact, an example of that exists in our DEP office. When the state was consolidating our office building footprint in 2021, the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance, otherwise known as DCAM, they were able to modify cubicle partitions from the buildings we were no longer using to create new cubicles at the Salt and Stall building where our headquarters now lives. So it's interesting because if they hadn't told us about that, we would have had no idea. The partitions and desks were cleaned up and they looked absolutely new to us when we moved in, and we had no idea that they were being reused. So I guess it's just a testament to, there's a lot of good stuff out there, and it's not dingy and gross. It's totally reusable under the right circumstances. Next slide, please. So as we mentioned, bulky items in the context of this plan refers to household durable goods and then business and institutional furniture, fixtures, and equipment. At the household level, we're thinking of items that are too large to put in the trash, either in the bag or the barrel. So think about things that are like couches, tables, dressers, large toys, appliances, mattresses, toilets, cabinets, things like that come from your home. White goods, by the way, are not included as bulky items because they are waistband items, and for the most part, they are already captured by our municipalities. At the business level and in household structures with shared dumpsters for trash, think of items that are extra big and bulky and not easy to manage alongside other trash. A few examples would include desks, chairs, conference tables, office partitions, filing cabinets, lighting, large tools, and a lot more. So often these are durable items that are intended to last a long time and at least several years, and that's why they're being targeted, because they have a lot of life left. Next slide, please. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of today, where we're going to review the strategies that were outlined in the action plan as they relate to our priority target material, which is bulky items today. And I'm going to go over the actions that we're set out, the status of those actions to now, and give you a couple of examples if we have them. Everything that we're reviewing in the next few slides is coming directly from the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan. And I want you to please note that staff from across the waste reduction group, both municipal and commercial branches, have worked to support these reuse initiatives that I'm going to cover. So it's not just the Muni branch. So if you look at the first row on this slide, you'll see strategy, action, status, and examples. This first strategy, it's just like what Leah covered earlier, the education and behavior change. So the first strategy we're going to look at, there are two actions under this first strategy that we think relate to bulky items, but there is crossover with other priority materials. So they are: develop a statewide education campaign around best practices for reducing waste and increasing reuse, and develop an online reuse directory to better connect residents with reuse repair and share resources across the state. Through our Recycle Smart MA education and outreach platform, we've created posts about reuse of some items, such as mattresses, but we've also created posts about past micrograntees in the form of partner spotlights and included blurbs about their work in our Recycle Smart newsletter. So that's one way we are educating. And in general, there's plenty of opportunity to do more relative to bulky items and reuse. And we would love to get your stories. I don't know if you guys all know this, but Leah and I are also on the Recycle Smart MA we're part of that team. And anytime you guys have a video or some kind of a post to share, if you're a past grantee or a partner for Recycle Smart, send it our way. We would be happy to amplify that for you. In terms of developing an online reuse directory, there hasn't been any action of note yet. Our Beyond the Bin tool provides information about donation outlets, but it's geared towards people looking to donate as opposed to people looking to buy, or, it's not an exchange, really. Next slide. For tools, resources, and technical assistance. So there's a lot going on these slides. I'm not going to read everything, but I'm going to go to the example. So MassDEP has developed guidance around K-12 school furniture reuse, as well as best management practices for businesses and institutional furniture and equipment through the Recycling Works program. Maybe Leah, if you could maybe put a link to that in the chat too. I think I forgot to send that to you earlier. Recycling Works also provides resources and technical assistance for commercial construction projects separating materials for reuse. So that's a little bit of a crossover there. For municipalities, MassDEP encourages local repair and reuse events like tool lending libraries and swap shops, with information available on our reuse and repair program website. And I think Leah has a link for that as well, so you can see what we're talking about. We have not yet taken any steps to ID and promote or pilot furniture, fixture, and equipment leasing models. One avenue to consider would be through MassDEP's outreach to colleges and universities through the College and University Forum and newsletter available through Recycling Works. I'm pausing here because I want to make sure everybody has a chance to look at this slide, because we can always go back to them during the discussion portion, but I want to make sure that you're all having a chance to absorb everything so that if you have ideas, you can put them in the Q&A. Next slide, please. So the next action is to identify and share model procurement policies focused on buying durable, repairable, and refurbished or remanufactured goods. No specific action has started on this yet, but when we get to the procurement strategy slide in a few minutes, I'll touch on one place we are looking for reuse opportunities in procurement. Regarding the last action listed here, with respect to guidance related to illegal dumping, one example of support that is available in certain circumstances is the Environmental Crimes Strike Force, which can help investigate illegal dumping and provide support to munis. There are other opportunities to develop more guidance. I know of only 2 examples off the top of my head for the strike force. One was in Boston, illegal dumping, and one was in Worcester, and I think it had to do with textiles, because I know that that's an issue at the textile bin. Next slide, please. So moving on to grants and financial incentives. Once again, lots going on here. The first action, this one is providing local businesses, NGOs and municipalities financial assistance. We are doing that through the micro grants. Since 2019, we've awarded almost $78,000 for bulky item specific projects. I'm going to give you a few examples. In FY19, we awarded Fresh Start Furniture Bank a grant, and they used the funds to enable themselves to have a functioning loading dock to load and unload furniture. I can't remember if they purchased it or if they repaired it. The award amount was $31.50. In FY22, we awarded Urban Missionaries of Our Lady of Hope grant funding to purchase an overflow container in their parking lot. It houses donated furniture items there until there's space to transfer them to the little store showroom. So they have a little showroom, and then there's like a parking lot in the back, and they have a storage space. We gave them $5,000 for that. In FY22, we awarded Hand Up a grant that they used to launch their mattress retail business. And in FY25, we awarded a grant to Buzzards Bay Area Habitat for Humanity. They used it to create a ramp donation and reuse program. And Leah, do we have a case study for them yet? I know they've submitted a final report. It's a really fantastic program. We can share that if anybody's interested. Through the Recycling Business Development Grant, we awarded Wachusett Earth Day over $80,000 to dismantle furniture for further reuse. I don't know if any of you guys have been out there, but it's amazing. So the next action, incentivize reuse programs through our municipal SMRP grants. Last round of grants were awarded, we awarded a swap shed to 16 communities for a total of $96,000 of grant funding for them to purchase the swap sheds. And we also awarded about $182,000 for bulky related points earned through the Recycling Dividends Program. To earn those points, you can earn them in a couple of ways if you're a municipality. You can operate a swap shop where residents can drop off reusable home goods and furnishings for others to take. And the swap shop must be sufficiently enclosed to protect items from the weather, because we want to, reserve and make them still valuable when we're sharing them. And then they can also sponsor zero waste days, which during which they will collect bulky items. And also, to remind everyone, grant dollars earned through the Recycling Dividends Program can be used to support donation and reuse opportunities on the local level. So you perform these actions and you get money for them, which is supposed to like fill your coffers so that you can do more of these programs. Next slide. So in the job training strategy, supporting the development or expansion of training programs, coordinating with other state agencies, and partnering with schools, there has not been any action on our part to report for these actions. When we get to the feedback section of this meeting, we'd love to hear from you about this strategy and the listed actions. And this is another one where I kind of want to be quiet for a moment to let you absorb it in case you have things to share or feedback or suggestions. Okay, next slide, please. This next section on legislation, policies, regulation, and ordinances is another action step that has not yet begun. Again, we welcome your feedback. We welcome your ideas. You may notice that there is some overlap between bulky item reuse and deconstruction of building materials. We are developing our efforts in this space, and there's some guidance on the Recycling Works website. I mentioned it earlier that there is some overlap in some of these actions with like taking or salvaging things out of deconstructed buildings. We're going to go deeply into deconstruction efforts during our next meeting, which is actually next Tuesday. So we will let you know more about that at the end of this meeting if you haven't received the email yet. With regards to networking, we facilitate information sharing and networking opportunities amongst reuse stakeholders through our R&R work group meetings like this one. We are establishing a network that will focus explicitly on bulky items, which we may refer to as our bulky item network. It's not written in stone. Happy to take suggestions. We're working to develop partnerships that support reuse of building materials as well as furniture, fixtures, and equipment through our deconstruction work group. And our Recycling Works program provides technical support as well as networking opportunities through summits they hold and through their website. Next slide, please. My last slide makes note of our strategy relative to procurement and identifying our work with the state's OSD and their EPP program to create procurement policies and contracts that drive demand for durable products at the state and local level. Work here is developing on two fronts. For munis participating in our SMART grant program, we are updating one of the minimum eligibility criteria that addresses procurement. In 2026, all participating munis will be required to have an updated EPP procurement policy that aims to minimize waste and prioritize reuse. This also encourages munis to utilize the state surplus property program while prioritizing donation and reuse before disposal of goods or equipment. So this completes the review of our action items for bulky materials and the status of our work thus far. And we're ready to open this discussion and take your questions and feedback. So please feel free to raise your hand or use the Q&A function to raise your questions, offer feedback. But as you do that, please introduce yourself and share what and or how you work in this space. And if nobody wants to start first, I can start with some prompting questions, but I'll be quiet for a minute and see what we got. Okay, I don't see anything. I have a question for Kathy Mirza in the Q&A. I know she's on. She may or may not be able to answer this, but we can respond later with it with an email text. With a link in an email. It's from Susan Alexander. I read on your website somewhere a reference to a tough study that was able to monetize the value of reuse and repair in Massachusetts. Is that study available? I am almost positive it is, but I couldn't tell you where to find it, which is why I think Kathy can. And if she can send it to me, I will send it to you. And if you would like to follow up with an email, please, we'll send that to you. I know we have it online. I just don't know where. Okay, Wendy has her hand up.
Hey there. So looking at particular items, let's say some household items like upholstered chairs, upholstered couches, my bane of my existence, sleep sofas and sectionals. if we are deconstructing and recycling mattresses, what is preventing the DEP from looking into that being part of a waste ban? Because, and encouraging businesses to start, it's a very similar process. The contents of those items are exactly the same. So is that something that anyone has taken some time to look into? Because that would do some serious reducing of tonnage for municipalities and give us more viable recyclable materials.
Well, not that I am aware of. I'm sure somebody somewhere has talked about that. But Wendy, you're in the town of Winthrop. Are you, this is something that I feel like is exactly the kind of feedback we're looking for, and is something that we want to kind of tackle with our new bulky waste network. So I'm, first of all, curious like what you do, and B, if you want to, if you already gave us your name to join the network listserv.
Always.
What do you do in the town?
I'm a solid waste recycling manager.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, noted, and thank you. Eric?
Hi, how's it going? Can you hear me okay? Because I'm in the factory, so it might be loud.
Yeah.
Okay. To Wendy's point, we are a mattress recycler. We actually have looked at that question of picking up sofas, chairs, upholstered items. And it's an extraordinarily complex and difficult thing to deconstruct, unlike mattresses that are all basically the same. I mean, the construction sides are different, but we know when we open it up, the sort of things we're going to find. Unfortunately, when you start to look at furniture, it's very, very complex. And a lot of time, it takes a ton of labor. Even when we have to break apart the folding beds, that come into sort of the platform beds. I mean, those probably take one of our folks an hour to do, where a mattress, it takes about 5 minutes. So I know we looked at it, and we've been approached many, many times with, why can't you take in, sofas, armchairs, and things like that? And it just, the reality of the size of those items to pick up in a truck and then to break them apart is really, really complex. So unfortunately, that's why, Wendy, we haven't done it. And I think that's probably why other folks like us that are involved in the mattress recycling world haven't done it. So just want to give you that perspective.
Hi, I just wanted to add, I think Eric got it right, that it's, well, a lot of people think it's the same material. It's really not. It's mattresses are distinct, but there is one vendor on our state contract FAC 90 that will deconstruct furniture, upholstered furniture. It has different pricing. So it is, I think, more complex, and the pricing could reflect that. But there's at least one vendor that I know that would take these materials. So you could check that out if you were really interested.
I have a question for prompting. So are there different actions we should consider as we continue to implement the plan over the next 5 years? Different ones than, are there actions that we didn't say that you were like, oh, what about that? Other than deconstructing furniture?
We do have a couple questions in the Q&A. And feel free, as I read these, if anybody wants to unmute and elaborate on your question, totally welcome. Melissa Wenzel asked if anyone in MA is deconstructing and promoting individual material reuse or recycling of piano material specifically. Another challenging item here in Minnesota. And Melissa, do you want to go ahead and chime in?
Sure, I'll be happy to. We have an organization that takes in pianos, refurbishes them, and sells them, workforce development nonprofit, and they've approached me several times over the last couple of years on how to be better, work faster at deconstructing materials to recycle the parts. So they're doing that limited now with a small grant from a county, but they want to maybe scale up, knowing that for every piano that they might be deconstructing for material recycling, there's probably 10 out there. So just curious if that's a material that's been addressed in Massachusetts.
Not as far as I know, Melissa, but that's really interesting because I do see them offered on Buy Nothing a lot. And it's like it always surprised me because I always wanted a piano and I was like, wow, I have a piano. But yeah, noted. We haven't yet, but that's really interesting. I wonder how much of a problem they are.
There's a lot of them. I mean, at some point, I believe we will no longer have any because of the, desire to move to electronic pianos, but there's still some really nice ones out there. Okay, those are going to continue to be reused, the $10,000 grand piano. So I guess those will still exist, but probably stay whole because they're of value. Did you get a chance to see my other question too? Sorry to hog up chat.
I'm just seeing it now, but if you wanna go ahead.
Verbally.
Yeah, I was away from the computer, but able to hear when the conversation was focused on K-12 schools and furniture reuse or recycling. I started to go to my computer as I was hearing this, so I might have missed some of that in the first place. But we have a lot of schools that do want to reuse or get their materials reused, office furniture primarily. And they confess to me, the people that are in sustainability roles at K-12 schools, that, oh, well, we can't just give away furniture. That's not a good use of taxpayer funding, according to my decision maker, my boss. And I'm constantly thinking in terms of, but you're willing to pay money to destroy these materials? Like, really? Seriously? So can you share more about that or share a link or something?
So that was one of the actions we have not started yet.
That's okay. But even just to get some basic and just to maybe I'm verbally giving you permission to feel really, really good that's a really great place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we look at the action plan, there was like a note that, and I think this is just like what we were aspiring to do when we wrote this action, that we would seek to connect with K through 12, voc tech schools, nonprofits, social enterprises, and other organizations to support existing training programs or the development of new training programs focused on repair and refurbishment skill development. And that would be via amplification or grant funding. And then there is, oh man, Leah, Kathy was just talking about this yesterday. What is the procurement law for salvage?
Chapter 30B.
What was that, Kathy?
Did you hear me? Chapter 30B, the procurement rules. Sorry, I don't have much voice today.
It's okay. Chapter 30B. And I can put, if one of us will look for that and put it in the chat. That's the laws that they have to do.
Thank you so much. We have a lot of success with the higher institutions, colleges and universities. A lot of reuse is happening there. So that's also kind of why I'm sort of flummoxed about the fact that K-12 is having a different problem. Thank you, Kathy. Get better.
I also put 2 links in the chat. One was earlier in the presentation about Recycling Works, some of the guidance they provide on their website. So check that out. There's a lot of good stuff there. And that's broader for like commercial businesses, institutions, but they've got a lot of good resources. And then I also just dropped into the chat. We have a Green Sword group. It's a working group that focuses on schools and has, a whole bunch of different folks from around the state on it. And we have a reuse subgroup that's at the moment more focused on food service ware. But there is a new page on that webpage that talks a little bit about furniture and equipment. And so hopefully that'll grow out into more resources. But there's a few there too that you can take a look at.
You all are wonderful. Thank you so much.
Before we go to the next 2 questions, I'm wondering if we should do the poll.
Sure.
Can you please launch the poll? So the poll question is going back to what we mentioned earlier about our decision to combine residential and commercial bulky waste. We want to know, is that a good idea? Should we combine residential and commercial bulky items? And if you say yes or no, you have to be willing to explain your reasoning. Well, we have a 60-40 split. That is
Interesting.
interesting. So this is great because now I want to know the people who are saying no. Why are you saying no? Like, it's really interesting to us. I'm going to end the poll. And then the yeses, why are you saying yes? If you want, you go ahead. Okay, so let's go to Andrew and maybe more hands will raise to share their reasoning.
Hello. I'm curious. So pre-poll, I was going to say, one of the things that so I'm with Boston Building Resources. We are in the, excuse me, like the least sort of efficient market of reuse, which is bulky and specific building materials. But the problem that we encounter constantly, and more acutely, I'd say in the last 6 months, is that the supply of this stuff is endless. The problem is the market is very small and seems to be shrinking a bit. And the real issue that we have in terms of building materials, but also with bulky goods, we've been getting offered tons of office furniture and like all sorts of stuff lately that we would like to be able to be helpful about. There's often a long lead time in being able to receive materials and being able to find a happy user for them, no matter what the price point is. We are a nonprofit. We will sell things as cheaply as possible just to move them along. We will give them away if we can find an opportunity to do so. But storage remains like the constant problem. Sales floor is a problem, but just storage of materials and sort of network for market development remains a constant problem. And I'm curious if this is something that's on your radar, if there's things you've been thinking about in terms of moving this forward or helping or anything really.
Well, I think that is a perennial challenge that's been brought to our attention. I know this through Decon too. So noted. And would you say that there's like an action that where this would go, Andrew, where you would, I'm wondering like where in the actions we note it? Or I mean, not to put you on the spot, but like,
Sure.
yeah.
I mean, we think about it all day, right? I mean, there are other, in my limited understanding, there are other agencies in the state of Massachusetts who hold large portfolios of underutilized properties. There are places like almost all these storage needs are temporal, right? Like people need places to park stuff for 6 to 12 months. People need a network for distributing the stuff. It's not as if there needs to be some large multi-story, beautiful, permanent sort of reuse warehouse somewhere. But if there were a way for sort of even, my city of Watertown just got a storage container, I think it was one of your micro grants for a swap shop at the recycling center in Watertown, just fantastic. But it's tiny and Watertown's got, 35,000 people in it. It's going to get overwhelmed the day we open it. So it feels like a space problem. And it seems like the state ought to have some lead on underutilized square footage somewhere in the Commonwealth. That would be a place where like registered nonprofits or other folks who are interested in this would be able to store and coordinate and move things around. Donna's next up. Donna and I have had lovely conversations together. We're all sort of trying to approach the same problem. What helps one helps the other. It's not really a competition. There's an endless amount of this stuff. We just don't have anywhere to put it.
So I don't have any answers for you today, but I do appreciate you bringing it up. And I think
I'll say it again next week.
Good, you should. And you also will be on you'll be getting all of our emails as we start working up this subgroup for bulky. So I look forward to anybody else who might have a solution. And as we move forward with the bulky, we're going to have to bring in agencies outside of DEP. I think we've already talked about this a little bit, that might have more information relative to that. Where is their unused space? Because DEP Muni Branch certainly don't know, but there are some that should. So I hope that helps you for now, Andrew. It's a
Yeah, great.
non-answer, but I want you
It's
to know.
fine. It's fine. It's the drum that I must bang. So thank you very much.
No problem. You want to go, Donna?
Sure. So funny. I was actually going to say the exact same thing as what Andrew just highlighted. And, just the other day, I had a call offering me 187 school desks, and I just don't have the space, but I really hated to see those desks go to waste. So as Andrew said, I completely agree. If there was a space that we could use for like the temporary holding of items, because 9 times out of 10, when we get offered, furniture and fixtures, it's under the premise of you have to come and get it today or tomorrow. So if we could extend that timeline to facilitate its reuse, we'd be much more successful. So if there was like a large warehouse that everybody could kind of temporary use some space, I think it would go a long way. I also just want to express my strong support for your suggestion of having a reuse directory for those that are involved in furniture and fixture repurposing. I think, anything we can do to raise awareness of the outlets that are out there would go a long way. And to help do that, I think that the networking among the type of groups that are represented here today would be fantastic. And it's for that reason that I would express my support for keeping the residential and commercial bulky waste combined, because the Great Exchange has lots of really valuable partnerships with entities that are more focused on the residential type materials, where we're more focused on the commercial. And the partnerships have been invaluable, where I can reach out to them and say, hey, I have an offer for this, but it's not a great fit at the Great Exchange. And they do the same for us. So that's why I think keeping them combined is would be most valuable.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you expressing your reasoning for keeping them together. I want other people to please, give us their reasoning too, because no decisions have yet been made. And I was a little surprised to see that 60% said no. So, that shows how we were thinking. So, yeah, Dana.
So I actually think that they should be kept separate. So for us, for example, we only do the commercial side. So for us to combine them, even though some of our items we do end up donating to like household goods and other places, like for us having them separated is best. But also I, really agree with Donna and Andrew, if there could be a warehouse space that we could also use as a different swing space, or I think it would really help. I mean, we most often go, dock to donation, and we're really lucky in that sense that we have partners that will hold stuff in their warehouse for us for a few weeks. But being able to have, a sort of a space that we can, even if we paid a lower rent for it, would be really helpful to us.
So, Dana, thank you for admitting your vote. Hopefully others will as well, and Donna too. I'm just thinking about logistics. So for deconstruction, our deconstruction work group, we include lots of different sectors. Our stakeholder group has like historical preservationists, we have salvage people, C&D, haulers, architects, designers, contractors, builders, yada yada. We have everything. We have everything under the sun, and we when we're doing our work with them, it's more like, this is what's happening in this space, and, you know, kind of inspirational, but also educational. And then we have a steering committee, sort of working group planning team who helps us plan like our webinars, and is like, they're experts in the field, and they're giving us the information. They're giving us the information that we then disseminate through these webinars. We really take the lead from them. And I'm wondering, what would the difference be from keeping them separate or keeping them together in terms of how we tackle it as a priority material with these actions? Because I'm not sure I see, and I'm happy to hear otherwise, how the actions wouldn't translate to both, and how webinars and networking between the two wouldn't be potentially beneficial, but maybe it's not. I'm just curious if you can, from that point of view, I'm wondering, like, what do you think?
Sure, so I think that you're correct. The action plans would probably be the same, and the networking would be good, but for us, for example, we don't often get household things. It's a rarity that we do. I mean, some of the things that we get in the commercial side, we can translate into residential. But it's, you know, it's a loose way of translating. Like, you know, there may be side chairs that could be used, you know, as kitchen chairs, or, you know, things like that. And so we sort of think about that. But really, I mean, I guess, you know, when I think about it, yes, the action plan would be great. But that's why I initially said no to separate them, because in my world, we're always sort of in the commercial space, and it's very rare that we would have residential stuff.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, maybe I misunderstood the question. I voted no, and that's largely because we get brought into commercial and residential donations for furniture or bulky items and building materials sort of all the time, and we find the process for commercial stuff is you know, magnitudes of complexity more difficult to manage, and there are so many more stakeholders involved. The process is often a lot slower and complex, and requires like a ton of time on our end, which is often hard to manage. There's like a pretty in furniture anyway, there's like a pretty vibrant industry of people who liquidate the stuff to begin with, so we're often competing for scraps with people who sort of make a buck doing this on their own time. Whereas in the residential sphere, you know, you're talking to the person who wants to donate the thing, and it can happen immediately. It's a lot easier. So I suppose that's the way I was thinking about it, was like the complexity in the process. In our building, you know, we sell both to everybody all the time. The commercial stuff mingles with the residential stuff, and that's fine. But the donation process is really different from one to the other, and the considerations often for why you're donating or how to donate or the timeline is really different from one to the other.
Okay. That's really good to know. I mean, so we're not making any decisions today, but it's really interesting to hear it. We'll put it all on paper and we'll look at it over. Thank you for, thanks for expressing that. Wendy? Dana, you still have your hand up, but I don't.
I
know if you're
did put my
done.
hand up because I have a question. So I know that a lot of municipalities, and that's where my expertise is at the moment, do not take any commercial bulk items. And businesses and, you know, anything beyond the scope of a municipal building becomes a worry for the private person, right? So the owner of the business, the owner of the building. Part of the reason that I said no is because I know that in my specific town of, you know, 20,000, there's no way that our trash and bulk system could handle taking on anything from commercial. I'd be interested to see, you know, through our 351, you know, cities and towns, how many people actually take any kind of commercial bulk waste versus just anything from the municipality. I know that a lot of the munis have a tough time just getting rid of their own, items. For example, we have a middle school that was shut down a few years ago. We're having a hard time finding where these items can go instead of, adding to the tonnage and to the waste piles. There are a lot of spaces and places nowhere near me that, it would be Devon's. It would be my first thing would be like, to take that amount of stuff. So I think that one of the things that I had been thinking about a lot recently is trying to think if there's a way that in combination, the state, the DEP, and then counties start creating. So have Suffolk County, have Essex County, and come up with spaces and places that it's a shared space and financial responsibility between the municipalities and the state. It's just a thought. I'm throwing it out there, but I do think that it would be interesting to see if we could get a response as to how many people in municipal waste actually take anything beyond of bulk items beyond household.
Thank you for saying that, Wendy, because I think what I didn't do is express what we mean by combining them. And not that means that what you're saying doesn't mean that we should. But it feels like maybe I didn't do a very good job. So what we were thinking is, in order to get stuff done in 5 years, we want to create a subgroup that, knows a lot about bulky. And to combine them wouldn't mean, from my point of view, that municipalities would then start taking bulky more than they would normally, but we would come up with ideas of potential ordinances or permitting or whatever that would guide municipalities in helping get that stuff going to the right place. So like with examples from deconstruction, there might be an ordinance that says, if this is a historic building, you have to wait so many days or do a material management assessment, or what do they call it, Leah? Materials management assessment? Mm-hmm. Okay. Before you can take it down, and their whole goal is maybe you'll deconstruct some of it. So it would be kind of the same thing where it wouldn't be that this stuff would then be like the onus would be on municipalities to pick it up, but that there would be better guidance to promote reuse and repair before throwing it away. And that would be for businesses and that would be for residents. It would have to be separate because those two things are separate. So, and in terms of combining them for us, that would just be that representatives from both of those sectors would be coming together in a work group to talk about these issues. I think there's a lot of overlap, especially when you consider space. But, maybe, and obviously coming from a municipal point of view is a, very strong and important voice. And then you got the commercial sector and what they're handling. So everybody understanding that working together might be beneficial, but maybe not. In terms of your question about counties, that's a good question. And I come from California where we have really strong functional counties. Massachusetts doesn't seem to have that. We usually use the word regional, and we do support regional projects through the SMART grants and through the Waste Reduction Organics Capacity grants. So yes, we would love to have a more regional approach to this kind of thing. And I definitely think that could be, one of the actions that we can try to promote through our grants and, I guess mostly through our grants. I'm not sure how else at this point, but it would be fantastic. Claudine?
Sorry about that. Yeah, so just on the commercial side of things, commercial waste reduction branch chief here, I do see the storage and the potential combination or separation of municipal and commercial items as intersecting with our recycling market development initiative and associated recycling market development working groups. And we are also considering having, deeper dives into our breakout material categories, including bulky items, potentially late in 2025 and in 2026 and beyond. So I just want to encourage folks on the call to also dial into our recycling market development initiative with our next working group likely to be held this fall and should include updates to our recycling market development action plan.
We'll find that and put it in the chat.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Claudine. And while you're doing that, Janice, if it's all right, I'm just gonna invite Emerson Lennon to unmute if you're still here. And just
Hello.
they're perfect. Yeah, if you want to just, I was reading what you put in the Q&A, but I figured it might be helpful to just, if you want to share what you said with the group, and anything else.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So my name's Emerson Lennon. I am part of a team of folks that run this crazy little company based up in New Hampshire that pretty much our sole focus is sourcing used furniture to nonprofit organizations. We're primarily focused in the K-12 sector, just on a national level. But in Massachusetts, we do some higher ed residential projects and some office projects as well. I saw a couple of comments about mattresses and such, and just wanted to let you all know that we exist as a potential resource for twin mattresses, as long as they're the vinyl and nylon flame / moisture retardant volume. And I am interested in connecting with Eric Dyson after too. I think there might be some work we could do together potentially, but also just school furniture, classroom furniture. We're always a resource, particularly if you encounter large volumes. We're really not a solution for little stuff, but would be happy to strategize or help strategize about any classroom furniture or other projects that towns and school districts and such might have that involve, more larger volumes of stuff that that local distribution just isn't a great fit for.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You bet.
So, I just see a couple of comments in the chat, Leah. So
Mhm.
one of them is, do we have any sense of how other states are handling bulky commercial items, or what processes they have in place, or is this an issue everywhere? Would they be interested, would be interested in learning if there are pockets in the country that have had some ideas of how to handle some of these things? Us too. That's exactly what we're going to try to do through the network. We haven't yet, but it is, that is like what we're always looking for are models, and that's what we'll use to use as a first step when we're creating ideas and plans for what we're going to do. So I really would encourage you to join the network, and we'll find those answers together. That's definitely that's the goal. Well, I should say it's not the goal, but it's part of the whole process. Okay, so sounds like my explanation helped, with people saying no vote. They're saying maybe yes vote. Should we launch the poll again? Okay. There's
I could.
what?
I could.
Okay, you want to do it again? I'm so curious. I
Okay.
think I failed. Okay, now we have it split the other way. And I think, let's end the poll. I think what we could do is start off combining, and then if it needs to break away, we could do that. We could be flexible. I think it makes more sense to me because just knowing the whole landscape of it would be important to have it all in context at one time, as opposed to like learning about what the municipalities are doing next year, when we're talking about only commercial this year. So in terms of like the DEP stuff, I think that makes a lot of sense, but
And then
we're open
and I
to
think
debate.
And I think you mentioned this earlier, Janice, but I think where the vision of the two, where they might separate, is when it comes to specific tools and resources that either we can help provide or we can support through grant funding. It definitely makes sense in some cases to keep those things separate. So when we get to those bridges, we can cross them. But yeah, I think in terms of starting off and having a conversation all together, probably a lot of the same challenges on either side, I would guess. Anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah, and I will say that, like, just like with the decon group, we will defer to all the experts in the room when we're putting this stuff together. I mean, clearly, we are not experts in everything. So we need experts to help us help you. Sorry for the cliche, but that's the truth. So I have one more question. I know it's 2:17 and I'm happy to take more feedback if there is any more. But my last question is, when is a good time, do you guys think, to start this new network, this new endeavor for bulky items? We are thinking about this summer. And I will say that I know we talked about this last May, and then we talked about it again in January, but we finally have sort of finished up the work on the food service ware with Recycling Works, and we kind of wanted to have something in the bag before we started another one. So, and then we also have a decon. Actually, can you share the screen again? Should do this, go through the final slides. We have our deconstruction reducing webinar, working group webinar next week. Building materials deconstruction work group next Tuesday. We're going to go through, we're going to have some lightning rounds of people showcasing the work that's being done across the state and multiple sectors. We've got design, like state agency, residential, and business. They're going to do 5 to 7 minutes, and then we're going to go back to the same action stuff for decon, and we're going to talk about a workshop that we are going to be facilitating in the fall to kind of like bring a lot of our thoughts and goals into real fruition, to manifest our dream of deconstruction happening here in Massachusetts. So we're going to be talking about that, but I think in the meantime, we can probably start broaching this new subject. And so I'd like to see a show of hands if you could, oh wait, go to the next one. Let's just make sure before I get a show of hands. And then the grant deadlines, just a reminder, next Thursday is the grant deadline for the Reduce and Reuse micro grant. The question and answer period for that has ended, but you can still apply. Go to the micro grant webpage for the application. June 2nd, Sustainable Materials Recovery Program. Those are the municipal grants. That is the deadline for those. Q&As have also ended for that, but you can find a wealth of information on the SMRP webpage. July 15th, the Innovations Grant is going, and I don't have the website for that, Andy, maybe Leah does, but it's a really great new opportunity that we have. And then later this year, we're going to be opening up the Reuse and Recycling Business Development Grant, which has been going on since like 2017, 2016. So it's one that has been around a while, but we have new priority materials for that grant. So it's really interesting. So I think that's it. If you guys have, next slide, if you have questions, more feedback, you can email Leah, Kathy, and I, or one of the above. But then, okay, so I just wanted to show that and then get a show of hands of who is ready to rock and roll on the bulky items network starting this summer. Andrew, you're the only guy. Come on. I got a couple other people. How about in the fall? We want to start it this year, but I'm wondering, is there more interest in doing it in the fall? Jessica says a little heart. Dana says yes for the fall. Okay. Well, more to come. Sydney, good. More to come on that, and I think we will attempt to try to do it late summer if we're being realistic. Leah, do you think we have hit our conclusion?
I think so. Let me just check the Q&A one more time to make sure we didn't miss anything. I did see a note from Melissa again, asking if we would ever explore online material marketplaces like Reaply or Recapture It. I think those things are on our radar, and certainly, we've heard a buzz from different organizations in Mass that are thinking about those platforms. And I want to say that there's a municipality or two that are thinking about it as well. Yeah. Anything else to add on that, Janice? It's like a lot of these things, it's in the early stages, and I don't know if we have any great case studies to point to yet, but that's definitely something we're continuing to think about. And like in a broad sense, online marketplaces and inventories are something that a direction we want to see people going, so that we can make it more accessible for the public and our business communities to find this stuff.
Yeah, and I think one of the hopes that we had for getting feedback today was also to give us a direction on when we do this network, like what should we cover? And it sounds like, maybe the first one will be like, what do we mean by combining these two things? And what's the point of that? And then and what is the point of the working group or the network or whatever? And then the second is like, we hear you, space is a concern. But I think that part of that is also getting the word out that this stuff exists, and the quality of the stuff that exists, so that you can create more of the market for the stuff so that it's not hanging around. So I think those two things kind of, well, they go hand in hand to me. So all of those things, great topics for discussion. And like, again, I want to just say, like, we're going to rely on your expertise as we go through this. MassDEP can't do it all, but we want to support where we can. So on that note, I think we can adjourn. Thank you all. And again, remember, you can email us if something comes up later that we didn't cover.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.